Class 11 NCERT book, Class 12 NCERT book. कैसी पहेली है ये, कैसी पहेली NCERT। जितना भी पढ़ लो इसको, जितना भी समझो परेशानी। कैसी पहेली है ये, कैसी पहेली NCERT।
Hello dear students, welcome all of you. So in this series we will be doing something different. अभी तक की क्लास में मैं एक टॉपिक लेती थी और उसको समझाती थी, but from this series what I am going to do is we are going to decode NCERT line by line. What I mean is that you must have studied NCERT और आपको कभी लगा होगा ऐसा कि there are certain lines which are not self-explanatory or in which you have difficulty in understanding, or if you feel that it's like a riddle which you need to solve. So in this series, that is Decoding NCERT, what we will be doing, we will be deciphering those lines which seem difficult or which seem sort of a riddle, and some things which are going behind those lines, या फिर जो वो lines के बारे में वो कुछ बताना चाहते हैं लेकिन अच्छे से उन्होंने explain नहीं किया है। कहीं पे या तो डायग्राम्स मिसिंग है, या फिर कहीं पे एक्सप्लेनेशन इतनी बढ़िया तरीके से नहीं है, या फिर कई बार ऐसे डाउट्स हैं आपके मन में जो क्लियर नहीं हो पाते हैं. सो दैट एवरीथिंग वी आर गोइंग टू टेक इनटू अकाउंट इन दिस particular section. So in today's class we will be discussing body fluids and circulation chapter in the Decoding NCERT. Okay, so let's start with it.
So here we can see chapter number 18, that is body fluids and circulation. And here, as I'm not going to discuss any particular topic in this series, I'm just going to decipher the lines which are difficult. So let's see one of the lines here. Let's go to Erythroblastosis Foetalis, which is an important part of this chapter. So this is Erythroblastosis Foetalis. Now, as you know, what is Erythroblastosis Foetalis? Now, just see this line from here to this line. Okay, now let me just tell my PDF to read it.
In case of her subsequent pregnancies, the Rh antibodies from the mother, Rhve, can leak into the blood of the fetus, Rh plus Ve, and destroy the fetal RBCs. This could be fatal to the fetus or could cause severe anemia and jaundice to the baby. This condition is called Erythroblastosis Foetalis.
Okay, so here you have seen that in case of the subsequent pregnancies, what will happen in Erythroblastosis Foetalis, that since the mother is Rh negative and the baby is Rh positive, so for the mother, Rh positive, this is like a foreign antigen. So what will happen in the mother, antibodies will be generated against this child, which will lead to the destruction of RBCs. Okay, so the red blood cells will be destroyed. Now the question here, which most of the students ask, is that this could be fatal to the fetus or could cause severe anemia and jaundice to the baby. This condition is called Erythroblastosis Foetalis. Then how does anemia is being caused, and how is jaundice related to Erythroblastosis Foetalis? Okay, so that's the question here, that how is anemia and jaundice related to Erythroblastosis Foetalis. Okay, now if we see what is anemia, what is the definition of anemia, what happens in anemia. So anemia is basically when the red blood cells count becomes very low. Okay, that is anemia. And here, as we know that the mother's antibodies has attacked the child's red blood cells, so obviously there will be a decrease in the red blood cells in the child, so that will cause anemia. Okay, so anemia is clear how anemia is being caused in this disease, right? Second is jaundice. Now, how is jaundice related to erythroblastosis foetalis? Jaundice में क्या होता है? So jaundice is basically, it is yellowing of the skin, yellowing of the eyes, the white part of the eyes, yellowing of the nails, right? This is jaundice, and it occurs due to the accumulation of bilirubin and biliverdin. Okay, so it occurs due to the accumulation of bilirubin and biliverdin. Now you will ask, what can we do about this? What is bilirubin and biliverdin, and where does it come from? So bilirubin and biliverdin are actually the degradation products of RBC. Okay, so since RBC is being degraded, RBC is being destroyed, so this is a destruction pathway of the RBC in which bilirubin and biliverdin is formed. Now, since the RBC is being destroyed to such a great level, more level of bilirubin and biliverdin will be formed, and because of which jaundice will occur. Okay, so now it is clear that how in a baby anemia and jaundice conditions can be present in erythroblastosis foetalis. I hope it is clear to you. Okay, let's come to the next question now, next line. Now here under 18.3, you can see circulatory pathways, in which they have discussed about open circulatory system and closed circulatory system. Okay, so let's see this line, which is open circulatory system is present in arthropods and molluscs, in which
Open circulatory system is present in arthropods and molluscs, in which blood pumped by the heart passes through large vessels into open spaces or body cavities called sinuses. Annelids and chordates have a closed circulatory system, in which the blood pumped by the heart is always circulated through a closed network of blood vessels.
Okay, now here as you can see, it is written that open circulatory system, they have given examples, is present in arthropods and molluscs, in which blood is pumped by the heart, passes through large vessels into open spaces. So basically in the closed circulatory system, we will be having proper arteries and veins. A closed system will be there, a closed network of blood vessels will be there, inside which the blood will be flowing, whereas this is not the case in the open circulatory system. Now here there is an exception which is not mentioned, and it is often asked in the exam, because you know that NEET exam or any other exam for that matter is based on exceptions. A lot of questions come about exceptions, right? So here they have mentioned open circulatory system is present in arthropods and molluscs. Now the question here is that, does all molluscs have open circulatory system? Do you think this is the case? Yes or no? Think about it. Are there any exception to this? Are there any molluscs who have closed circulatory system? Yes, there are certain molluscs which have closed circulatory system, and therefore we cannot say that all molluscs have open circulatory system, right? We cannot say that. Now, which are the molluscs which have closed circulatory system? Those are the cephalopoda class organism, which includes octopus, squid, cuttlefish. Okay, so these are some of the examples of class cephalopoda, octopus, squid and cuttlefish, in which they have closed circulatory system instead of being from the mollusca phylum. Okay, so here there is an exception which you have to take care of. And remember, even in animal kingdom, the chart which is given at the end of the chapter, there also you can mention that this is an exception. Clear? Okay. Now here, as you can see, let me read it aloud.
The entire heart is made of cardiac muscles. The walls of ventricles are much thicker than that of the atria.
Okay, now here you can see that they have mentioned that the entire heart is made of cardiac muscles and the walls of the ventricles are much thicker than that of atria. So here the question, there can be two questions which can be formed from here. Number one is why. Okay, why the walls of ventricles are thicker than that of atria. And secondly, out of the two ventricles, that is left ventricle and right ventricle, which ventricle is more thicker and why? Okay, let's try to understand this. Now, as you know that the atrium is the upper part and the ventricle is the lower part, let's go to the diagram of the heart, which is given here, right? So atrium is the upper part and ventricle is the lower part. Now, when ventricle has to pump blood, it really has to push the blood against the gravity, right? Against the gravity. So it requires a lot more effort compared to the atrium, because from the atrium, when the blood comes to the ventricles, it can just normally come because it is towards the gravity. But when ventricles had to push the blood, they have to put a lot of pressure. So because of that, the ventricles walls are thick enough so that they can exert that much amount of pressure to the atria so that the blood can go above, right? So that is the reason why ventricles are thicker than the atrium. Now the question comes that left ventricle, out of left ventricle and right ventricle, which ventricle is thicker? Okay, so the answer here will be left ventricle. The left ventricle is thicker, is much more thicker than the right ventricle. Okay. Now question is why left ventricle is thicker. So for that we'll have to see the circulatory pathway, the circulatory mechanism. So let's go to this diagram which is given here. Okay. See this diagram very, very carefully and try to locate what the functions of left ventricle and right ventricle are. So you can see that the left ventricle, which is shown as LV, it is pumping the blood to the body parts, right? It is pumping the blood to the body parts, whereas right ventricle is pumping the blood to where? Pulmonary artery, and it is going towards the lungs. So left ventricle is pumping the blood towards the body parts. Now body parts include both the part which is above the heart and the part which is below the heart. Okay, whereas right ventricle is pumping the blood towards the lungs. So because left ventricle is putting so much effort to push the blood or to pump the blood in all the directions, in all the body parts, therefore it requires much higher amount of thicker layer so that it can create that amount of pressure in order to pump the blood so that it can reach all the parts of the body properly. Okay, so this is the reason why left ventricle will be thicker as compared to the right ventricle. Hope that answers your question. Now see here, यहाँ से हमको दो questions मिल गए just from a single straight line. Okay, now let's go to another category. Now this is regarding blood groups. All of you know that what are the major blood groups, ABO blood grouping, and you know which is the universal blood donor and which is the universal blood recipient, right? As you can see over here, it is written that, see, O group individuals are called universal donors. Persons with AB group can accept blood from persons with AB as well as other groups of blood. Therefore, such persons are universal recipients. So, एक चीज तो clear है. One thing is clear that O blood group individuals are universal donors, okay, and AB are universal recipient. But the question which will come will not be that much easy because this is very simple to understand, right? Now, question will be out of O negative and O positive, which will be the universal donor? Okay. Similarly, out of AB positive and AB negative, which will be the universal recipient? Okay, so this complicates the question a little bit more. Now, as you know that plus and minus, that is positive and negative, stands for the RH, for the presence or absence of RH antigen, correct? Now, tell me, just think about it, pause the video for a moment and think about it that O negative or O positive, which will be the universal donor? So, if O negative blood is given to anybody, it is O negative. Therefore, it doesn't have any RH antigens. So, it will not generate any kind of antibodies from the recipient. So this is a safe option, and O negative can act as a universal donor. Okay, understood? Because it is O negative, it does not have any foreign antigen. So the recipient, even if it is positive, it won't think this as a something which is foreign. So O negative is the universal donor, O positive is not. Now let's talk about which can be the universal recipient out of AB negative and AB positive. So recipient, okay, जिसको आप blood दे रहे हैं, तो it will be AB positive, okay, universal recipient. कैसे? How? Because AB positive is the universal recipient. अगर आप उसको, if you give the blood that is positive, then also it will accept. If you give this person a negative blood group which is absent in Rh antigen, then also it will accept the blood group. Okay, so it will take the blood groups from everybody. So universal recipient. Okay, so this is how the questions can be complicated a little bit from these simple lines of NCERT. That is why this series I have named as Decoding NCERT or Deciphering the NCERT. Okay, hope that was clear.